Hello, my name is Dominic Hauser, and yesterday I gave a talk at the Cocoa Heads meetup in Cologne, and I thought maybe it's interesting for people not speaking German to see the talk as well. It's not really a complete talk. There were other talks at the meetup, so it's more like a lightning talk about ViewController transitions. So I show you the code. So this is the demo project I built for this talk, and it's about transitions between view controllers in a navigation stack. I just show you how the application looks like. I think it takes some time because the simulator still had to start. So let's see. Here we go. So this demo application is just a table view with 6 entries, and each entry uses a different transition to the next view controller. For example, I have the default transition, which is just a push transition for a normal navigation transition from one view controller to the other. Then I wrote a custom one where the transition is from the bottom, and it goes back to the bottom when I go back. Then here I have a transition where the elements are moved from the table view cell to the detail view. I have a transition where a mask opens and closes, and a tile transition, and last but not least, a fold transition. So how would we implement that? Let's see. Apple introduced with Xcode iOS 7 the ViewController animated transitioning protocol. Let's see how this looks like. For example, this one. When we go to the header file, we see there are two methods, two required methods we have to override, or we have to implement in a class, or it has to be a class. In the class that conforms to this protocol, first of all, the transition duration. This is the duration, how long the navigation controller expect the animation, the transition to last. And after that, the navigation controller pushes the new controller onto the stack and presents the view of that view controller. So after this time, we have to be finished with our animation. And there's the second method, animate transition. And in this method, we have to set up the animation and push views around as we would like to have in our animation. There are other methods, but those are optional, so these are the required ones. So let's see how we would, for example, implement the push from bottom transition. The duration is, in this case, just 1.5 seconds. And in animate transition, we first of all get the to view. The to view is the view that will be pushed onto the navigation stack, or the view of the view controller that will be pushed onto the navigation stack. So this is the view that will be visible when the transition is finished. So to animate our transition, we need to get the to view to animate it into the scene, into the view. And we do this by getting the to view from the transition context. There are also methods to get the view controller. This is, let's see, so we have here the view for key, and there's also a method view controller for key, where we get the view controller from that's going to be pushed onto the navigation controller. There's also a key from. This is the view or the view controller that is visible before we start the transition to the new view controller. But the from view controller is automatically added to the transition context container view. The container view is the view that is shown during the transition. So we have to animate all our views on that container view. So we get the container view and add the to view to it. And we set the frame of the to view that it's just outside of the bounds of the container view. And then we animate it into the bounds, into that the frame of the to view has the same bounds as the container view. And let's see again how this looks like when we let it run. So here, this is the from bottom. It's just pushed onto from the bottom up to the onto the container view. We can even let it run slowly. You can see it's pushed up until it's has the same bounds as until the frame of the from view is the same as the bounds of the container view. Okay, that was easy. If we want to do the other way around, so if you want to pop the view controller, it should pop down in the same direction as where it came from, and this is also done with the transition. Again, we set the time interval, how long the transition should take, and this time we get both the from view and the to view. That's because we have to insert the to view below the from view, because we are coming from the detail view controller. We want to go back to the table view, and the table view in this case is the to view. So we insert the to view below the from view that's already pushed or added to the container view. And then we animate the frame again. First of all, the frame is like the bounds of the container view, and then we animate it out of the frame of the container view. And in the end, we have to call transition complete transition to tell the navigation controller that we are finished with the transition, and that he can clean up and that he can give back the control to the user, that the user can touch the screen and control the application. Okay, this was easy. Let's see how we could implement something like the mask transition. This is still quite easy. What we do here is, again, we set the time interval, and we get the to view as we did before. We add the to view onto the container view. We set the bounds, and then we add a mask view to the to view. And at the beginning, it's a small mask view, only height and has only height and width of 2. And then we increase the mask view until it's 1.3 times the bounds height of the container view. And this results in the following transition. So we get the mask that increases in size. We can also, again, look at it slowly. So it expands until it fills the complete screen. And we can also get back. We can also go back. And it's just the same transition in the other way around. Here again, we use two transitions: the push transition and the pop transition. And here's the same, just the other way around. We start with the mask view that it's filling the whole container view, and then shrinking it down to very small size. Okay, then let's see the fold transition. The fold transition is a bit more complicated. Again, the duration is, this time it's 1.5, but sure, you can play around with this number and make it fit to your needs. And again, we get the from view and the to view. We add the to view to the container, and then we set, we get 4 different views using the snapshot API with different frames. And then when we have those, we set the beginning frames, and then we use animators to change the 3D transition. So we change the transition of the layer, and this is a 3D transition. And yes, we get the effect like something is folding that view to smaller sizes. And yeah, it's essentially, it's not really complicated. You just have to try. I had to trial and error a lot because I had to figure out where I have to set the anchors of the layer. You see, after each animator, I set a new anchor point to get the effect I want to achieve. Okay, so when we have all those transitions, how do we use them? The thing is, we set in the code lines where we create the navigation controller, we assign the delegate of the navigation controller to an instance of navigation controller delegate. And this is a class we wrote. The navigation controller delegate looks like this. We override the navigation controller animation controller for operation method. And in this method, we just decide from the view controllers that are in this transition, which transition we have to use. So if we are pushing to the from bottom view controller, we use the from bottom push transition, and so on and so on. And there's one specialty in this move elements transition. We only have one transition for the push and the pop. And what we are doing here is we get the operation of the navigation controller. This can be push or pop. And depending on what we get, we just change the animation. So we see here, if operation is push, we do something else than if it's pop. You have to decide if you want to use just one transition or if you write transitions for the pop and the push transition. I tend to write separate transitions for both, because then I can easier understand what's happening in the transition. And I find something like this is more complicated to reason about. Okay, there's one thing left I wanted to show you. For some of those transitions, I implemented gesture recognizers where the user can go back interactively between those view controllers. It's like the normal gesture you get from navigation controller, where you can pan from the screen to go back. You can also do this here in the elements transition. And this is implemented in using, again, the wait a minute, the mask, I think it's here, the mask pop transition. There we have the animate transition, but we also implement the optional interruptible animator. And from this method, we return a property animator, and don't start it yet. It's just the animator. And in animate transition, we get this animator and start it right away. But if we have implemented the interruptible animator, we only have to implement the navigation controller delegate method, navigation controller interactive controller for, and there we return an interactive transition. And this interactive transition, in this case, is just a class that's provided by Apple, UI% driven interactive transition. And this just uses our transition and using our pen gesture or the percentage we put into this interactive transition. I can show you here in the mask controller. We get here the interact we set when the let's see the whole story. So we set in the view.did_load a pen gesture recognizer, and when the pen gesture recognizer fires, we calculate a percentage of the transition that should be animated. Then we figure out if the pen gesture recognizer just began. In this case, we set interactive transition to an instance and call pop animated true on the view controller. And if the value of the pen gesture recognizer changes, we send the interactive transition via the update method the percentage of the transition that should be animated. And if everything is done, if the user is finished with this transition or lifts his finger, then we cancel the interactive transition or finish depending on how far the user has moved his finger. And important, at the end, we have to set the interactive transition to nil to give the system back the animation. Otherwise, it halts and waits for the user interaction on this interactive transition. So we have to set it to nil, that the system continues to animate the transition until it's finished. And this is all we have to implement in the view controller to get the gesture that pops interactively to the previous view controller. It depends on you what you need here, but normally a pen gesture recognizer is what you see in most apps, but you can use whatever you like, where you can calculate a percentage for the amount of transition that should be shown to the user. Yeah, this is it. When you have this pen gesture, then in the navigation controller here in the percent-driven interactive transition, when this is not nil, then the navigation controller uses, or the iOS system uses this transition, interactive transition, to figure out how much of the transition should be shown, how much of the transition should be done. And this is everything you have to implement. So quite nice to get kind of funny little movements from one view controller to the other, but you should not go too far with this. It's just, it should delight the user and not distract from what your app is actually doing. So don't put into these transitions complicated animations that distract from the cause of your app. Oh, one thing I forgot. You should listen to the isReducedMotion-enabled property of UI accessibility. And if this is set, you should return nil here, because in this case, the user has chosen not to use, the user has chosen to see only reduced motion in this application, and then we shouldn't use complicated transitions because they are distracting to those users. What this looks like in this application, in this demo application, I can show you here. So normally when we transition, we get this fold animation, and when the user sets reduced motion to on, then the application just uses, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, so then the application just uses the standard default transition between view controllers in the navigation stack. So this is all I wanted to show you today. I hope it's useful for some people. Let me know what you think, especially if you have some cool transitions you built yourself. Let me see them. And if you know how one can implement this in Swift UI, also let me know, because I have no idea how to implement that in Swift UI. I think it's not possible, but maybe I missed something. So let me know, and see you next time.